Lisa Thompson had always dreamed of being a mom. Ever since she was a little girl playing with dolls, she imagined herself pushing a stroller through the park and reading bedtime stories to her own children. When she married Tom at 26, they talked about having kids right away. They were both excited about starting a family and figured it would happen naturally, just like it did for most couples they knew, but life had different plans for them. Month after month, Lisa would take pregnancy tests, hoping to see 2 pink lines. Each negative result felt like a small heartbreak. At first, they tried to stay positive. "It just takes time," Tom would say, holding her hand. "We're still young, there's no rush." But as the months turned into a year and then stretched toward 2 years, the disappointment grew heavier. Their friends started having babies. Lisa watched as her sister announced her second pregnancy, and she had to excuse herself from the family dinner to cry in the bathroom. Baby showers became torture. Every social media post with tiny shoes or ultrasound pictures felt like a reminder of what she couldn't have. Finally, after 22 months of trying, Lisa made an appointment with Dr. Williams, a fertility specialist. Her regular doctor had recommended. The waiting room was full of couples who looked just as nervous as she felt. Tom squeezed her hand as they sat there, both trying to act like everything was normal. Dr. Williams was a kind woman in her 50s, who had been helping couples for over 20 years. She explained that they would need to run several tests to figure out what might be preventing pregnancy. Blood work, genetic screening, physical exams, the whole process would take a few months. Lisa threw herself into the testing. She had blood drawn so many times that the nurses started joking about her being irregular. Tom had his tests done too, though he seemed more uncomfortable about the whole process. "I feel like we're turning having a baby into a science project," he said one evening after another appointment. The first few test results came back normal. Lisa's hormone levels looked good. Tom's initial screening showed everything was fine too. For a brief moment, they felt hopeful. Maybe it was just bad timing. Maybe they needed to relax more, like everyone kept telling them. But then came the call that changed. EVERYHING Dr. Williams asked them to come in for an appointment to discuss some unexpected findings. The tone in her voice made Lisa's stomach drop. She knew it wasn't going to be good news. They sat in the same office where they had started this journey months earlier. But now the atmosphere felt completely different. Dr. Williams had a thick folder in front of her and wore the serious expression that doctors get when they have to deliver difficult news. "Lisa, your genetic screening has revealed something we need to discuss," she began slowly. "You have a condition called Marfan syndrome. It's a genetic disorder that affects your body's connective tissue." Lisa stared at her blankly. She had never heard of Marfan syndrome. It sounded made up, like something from a medical drama on television. Dr. Williams explained that Marfan syndrome affected everything from Lisa's joints to her heart. Many people with the condition lived normal lives, but pregnancy posed serious risks. The hormone changes and physical stress of carrying a baby could cause dangerous complications, especially with her heart. "Your aorta, that's the main blood vessel from your heart, is already slightly enlarged," the doctor continued. "Pregnancy could make it expand even more, and in severe cases it could rupture. That would be life-threatening." Tom reached for Lisa's hand, but she pulled away. She felt like she was floating outside of her body. Watching this conversation happen to someone else, but Dr. Williams wasn't finished. She turned to Tom and explained that his genetic tests had revealed he was a carrier for cystic fibrosis. Neither of them had any family history of the disease, so it came as a complete shock. If both parents are carriers, each child has a 25% chance of having cystic fibrosis, the doctor explained. Since Lisa has Marfan syndrome, there's also a 50% chance any child would inherit that condition as well. The room felt like it was spinning. Lisa tried to process what she was hearing. Not only was pregnancy dangerous for her, but any baby they might have could face serious health problems from day one. Dr. Williams gave them pamphlets and websites to research. She recommended they meet with a genetic counselor and think carefully about their options. Adoption, egg donation, sperm donation, There were other ways to build a family that wouldn't involve these risks. I want to be very clear with you both, she said, looking directly at Lisa. Getting pregnant with your current health situation could be extremely dangerous. We're not just talking about discomfort or complications. We're talking about scenarios that could be life-threatening for you and potentially devastating for a child. They drove home in silence. Lisa stared out the window, watching other families walk down the sidewalk. A woman pushing a stroller. A dad carrying a toddler on his shoulders. It all looked so easy, so natural. Why couldn't it be that simple for them? That night, Lisa sat on their couch with her laptop, reading everything she could find about Marfan syndrome. The medical websites were scary, full of terms she didn't understand and warnings about heart problems and sudden death. But then she found forums where real people with Marfan talked about their lives. Some of the stories were encouraging. Women who had successful pregnancies with careful monitoring. Others were heartbreaking, stories of complications and loss. Tom sat beside her, reading over her shoulder, neither of them speaking. Over the next few weeks, they met with specialists. A cardiologist examined Lisa's heart and confirmed the aorta enlargement. A genetic counselor walked them through probability charts and risk factors. Everyone was kind, but the message was the same. Having biological children was dangerous and probably not advisable, Lisa's mom tried to be supportive but didn't really understand. There are so many children who need homes, she kept saying. Maybe this is God's way of pointing you toward adoption. Lisa knew she meant well, but it hurt anyway. She wanted to experience pregnancy, to feel a baby growing inside her, to give birth to a child that was part of her and part of Tom. Tom struggled too, but in a different way. He was terrified of losing Lisa. The idea that trying to have a baby could put her life at risk made him want to forget the whole thing. But he also saw how much this meant to her, and he felt guilty about his own genetic contribution to their problems. Friends and family offered advice, most of it well-meaning but unhelpful. Just relax and it will happen. Try going on vacation. Maybe it's not meant to be. Nobody seemed to understand that this wasn't about trying harder or wanting it more. This was about genetics and medical conditions that no amount of positive thinking could change. As the reality of their situation settled in, Lisa and Tom faced an impossible choice. Follow medical advice and give up on biological children, or ignore the warnings and risk everything for a chance at the family they had always dreamed of having. For weeks after that devastating appointment, Lisa barely slept. She would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word the doctors had said. Tom would find her at 3 a.m, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, reading medical studies and forum posts from other women facing similar decisions. The house felt different now. The spare bedroom they had been planning to turn into a nursery remained empty, its door always closed. Lisa couldn't bring herself to walk past it without feeling a sharp pain in her chest. Tom suggested they use it as a home office instead. But Lisa wasn't ready for that conversation yet. Their first option was adoption. They attended an information session at a local agency, sitting in a circle with other hopeful parents. The process seemed overwhelming: background checks, home visits, interviews, and a waiting list that could stretch for years. The financial costs were staggering too, easily reaching $50,000 or more. Lisa tried to get excited about adoption, but something felt missing. She watched the other couples nodding eagerly as the social worker explained the process, and she wondered what was wrong with her. Why couldn't she just be grateful for any path to parenthood? I feel selfish, she confided to her best friend, Rachel, over coffee. There are children who need homes, and here I am being stubborn about wanting to be pregnant myself. Rachel stirred her latte thoughtfully. It's not selfish to grieve the experience you thought you'd have. You're allowed to want what you want. But wanting something and being able to have it safely were two very different things. Lisa knew that. The doctors had been crystal clear about the risks. They also explored other medical options. A reproductive specialist in the next city explained about egg donation and in vitro fertilization. Lisa could carry a baby made from Tom's sperm and a donor egg, eliminating the risk of passing on Marfan syndrome. But that brought its own challenges, the cost, the hormone treatments, and the emotional complexity of using another woman's genetic material. It would still be dangerous for you to carry a pregnancy, the specialist reminded them. Your heart condition doesn't go away just because we use donor eggs. Tom seemed more open to these alternatives than Lisa was. He researched sperm donation too, suggesting they could use both donor eggs and donor sperm to eliminate all genetic risks. I just want us to be safe, he said one evening. I want you to be okay. Lisa understood his fear, but she felt like every alternative took them further away from the family she had imagined. She wanted to feel a baby that was part of both of them growing inside her. She wanted Tom to see his eyes or her smile in their child's face. Late one night, while Tom was sleeping, Lisa found herself on a forum for women with Marfan syndrome. She had been avoiding it for weeks, scared of what she might read. But curiosity finally won. The stories were mixed. Some women wrote about successful pregnancies with careful monitoring and specialized care. They posted pictures of healthy babies and talked about the joy of motherhood despite the challenges. Others shared heartbreaking accounts of complications, emergency surgeries, and losses that had changed their lives forever. One post particularly caught her attention. A woman named Jennifer had written about her decision to have a baby despite her doctor's warnings. She had been monitored closely throughout her pregnancy, had regular heart checks, and delivered successfully at 37 weeks. Her daughter was now 5 years old and healthy. I'm not saying everyone should make the choice I made, Jennifer had written. But I'm glad I did. Yes, it was scary. Yes, there were complications. But my daughter is the light of my life, and I can't imagine our family without her. Lisa screenshot the post and read it again the next morning. She started following Jennifer's updates and eventually sent her a private message. Jennifer responded quickly, offering to talk on the phone about her experience. Their conversation lasted 2 hours. Jennifer was honest about the difficulties, the constant worry, the frequent doctor appointments, the bed rest during the final weeks. But she was also honest about her happiness and her belief that she had made the right choice for her family. The doctors have to tell you about all the worst-case scenarios, Jennifer explained. That's their job. But they can't tell you what the right decision is for you personally. Only you can decide what risk you're willing to take. Lisa felt something shift inside her during that conversation. For the first time in months, she felt like having a biological child might actually be possible. She started researching high-risk pregnancy specialists. She found a medical center 3 hours away that had experience with Marfan syndrome pregnancies. The maternal-fetal medicine doctor there, Dr. Peterson, agreed to see them for a consultation. Dr. Peterson was different from the other doctors they had met. He didn't immediately tell them pregnancy was impossible. Instead, he explained how they could make it as safe as possible. Regular echocardiograms to monitor her heart. Genetic testing early in pregnancy to check for cystic fibrosis. A team approach involving cardiologists, geneticists, and high-risk pregnancy specialists. I won't lie to you, he said. There are real risks involved, but with proper monitoring and care, many women with Marfan syndrome have successful pregnancies. The key is catching any problems early and being prepared to act quickly if complications arise. For the first time in months, Lisa felt hopeful. Dr. Peterson gave them statistics, research studies, and a detailed plan for how a pregnancy could be managed. It wasn't a guarantee of safety, but it was a roadmap. Tom was more cautious. The idea of Lisa being in danger terrified him. They had long conversations about what they were willing to risk and what they could live with if things went wrong. What if something happens to you? He asked one night. What if I lose you trying to have a baby? Lisa took his hands in hers. What if nothing happens? What if we're so scared of the what-ifs that we give up on something we both want? They decided to get a second opinion from another high-risk specialist. This doctor was more conservative, emphasizing the dangers and recommending against pregnancy. Now they had conflicting medical advice, which somehow made the decision even harder. Lisa's family was divided too. Her mother worried constantly and kept sending articles about adoption success stories. Her father stayed quiet, but she could see the concern in his eyes. Tom's parents were supportive but confused about why they would take such risks when other options existed. Only Rachel seemed to truly understand Lisa's perspective. "You're the one who has to live with whatever decision you make," she said. "Don't let anyone else's fear make that choice for you." After 3 months of research, consultations, and sleepless nights, Lisa and Tom finally made their decision. They would try to have a biological child, but they would do it with Dr. Peterson's team monitoring every step of the way. It wasn't a decision they made lightly. They had backup plans in case complications arose. They had discussed what they would do if genetic testing showed problems. They had even talked about the worst-case scenarios, as painful as those conversations were, but ultimately, they decided that the chance of having the family they had always dreamed of was worth the risks involved. They would be as careful as possible, but they wouldn't let fear stop them from trying. The night they made their final decision, Lisa felt a mixture of terror and excitement she had never experienced before. They were about to embark on the most dangerous and important journey of their lives. 3 months after making their decision, Lisa stared at the pregnancy test in disbelief. 2 pink lines. After years of negative tests, she almost couldn't trust what she was seeing. She called Tom at work, her voice shaking with excitement and terror. "Are you sure?" he asked, as she could hear him trying to stay calm. "I took 3 tests. They're all positive." That evening, they sat together on their couch, holding the positive test like it was made of glass. They were thrilled, but the fear was just as strong as the joy. This wasn't like other couples who could simply celebrate and start planning. For them, this positive test meant the beginning of the most carefully monitored 9 months of their lives. Dr. Peterson's team swung into action immediately. Lisa's first appointment was scheduled for the following week, and they explained that she would need to be seen every 2 weeks for the entire pregnancy. Regular blood work, frequent ultrasounds, and monthly heart evaluations would become her new normal. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of appointments and anxiety. Lisa felt like she was living in a medical facility. Every small pain or unusual feeling sent her into a panic. Was this normal pregnancy discomfort, or was something going wrong with her heart? Tom became incredibly protective, almost to the point of being annoying. He insisted on driving her to every appointment, even when she felt perfectly fine. He researched pregnancy nutrition for women with Marfan syndrome and started cooking elaborate meals with specific vitamins and minerals. Lisa appreciated his care, but sometimes she just wanted to feel like a normal pregnant woman. At 8 weeks, their first ultrasound showed a tiny, flickering heartbeat. Lisa cried with relief and joy, watching that little spark of life on the screen. For a moment, all the worry faded away. This was their baby, growing and developing just like it was supposed to, but the medical team remained cautious. Dr. Peterson explained that the first trimester was just the beginning. The real challenges would come later as Lisa's body changed, and the stress on her cardiovascular system increased. The morning sickness hit hard at 9 weeks. Lisa had read about pregnancy nausea, but this was overwhelming. She couldn't keep food down for days at a time, and the medical team worried about dehydration affecting her heart function. She ended up in the emergency room twice for 4 fluids. Each visit a reminder of how delicate her situation really was. At 12 weeks, they finally felt comfortable telling their families. The reactions were mixed. Lisa's mother cried with happiness but immediately started worrying out loud about all the things that could go wrong. Tom's parents were excited but kept asking if the doctors thought everything would be okay. Nobody knew how to celebrate this pregnancy the way they would a normal one. The genetic testing appointment came at 16 weeks. Lisa had been dreading this day since she first got pregnant. They would finally know if their baby had inherited cystic fibrosis from both parents. The test itself was simple, just a blood draw, but waiting for the results felt endless. Dr. Peterson called them personally with the news. Lisa knew from his tone before he even said the words. "I'm sorry," he said gently. The baby has tested positive for cystic fibrosis. Lisa felt like the world stopped spinning. She had known this was possible. They had a 25% chance. But somehow she had convinced herself it wouldn't happen to them. Tom sat beside her, his face pale, as Dr. Peterson explained what this meant. Cystic fibrosis was a serious genetic condition that affected the lungs and digestive system. Children with CF needed daily treatments, frequent hospitalizations, and faced a shortened life expectancy. Medical advances had improved outcomes significantly, but it was still a challenging condition that would affect their child's entire life. "We need to discuss your options," Dr. Peterson said carefully. "Some couples choose to terminate the pregnancy at this point. Others decide to continue, knowing what they're facing. There's no right or wrong choice here." That night, Lisa and Tom barely spoke. They both needed time to process this new reality. Not only was Lisa's life at risk from the pregnancy itself, but now they knew their baby would face serious health challenges from birth. Lisa researched cystic fibrosis obsessively, just like she had done with Marfan syndrome months earlier. She found parent support groups and read stories from families living with CF. Some were heartbreaking, children struggling with frequent infections and hospitalizations. Others were inspiring, kids and adults with CF living full, active lives despite their condition. They met with a genetic counselor who specialized in cystic fibrosis. She explained the latest treatments, the daily care routines, and the realistic expectations for children born with CF today. The conversation was both terrifying and hopeful. 30 years ago, most children with CF didn't live to adulthood, the counselor explained. Today, with proper treatment, many people with CF live into their 40s and beyond. New medications are being developed all the time. Lisa and Tom spent a week agonizing over their decision. They talked to other parents of children with CF. They met with pediatric specialists who would care for their baby after birth. They even visited a CF treatment center to see what their child's medical care would look like. In the end, they chose to continue the pregnancy. The decision wasn't based on denial or false hope. They understood exactly what they were facing. But they also believed their child deserved a chance at life, even if that life would include challenges. "We'll love this baby no matter what," Lisa said to Tom one evening, "and we'll give them the best life possible." The second trimester brought new worries. Lisa's heart function was being monitored more closely now as the pregnancy progressed. At 24 weeks, her latest echocardiogram showed some concerning changes. Her aortic root was beginning to dilate more than expected. Dr. Peterson increased her monitoring to weekly appointments. Lisa's activity was restricted, no lifting, no strenuous exercise, and plenty of rest. She had to quit her job earlier than planned because even the stress of her office routine was considered too much. By 28 weeks, the situation became more serious. Lisa's latest heart scan showed significant enlargement of her aorta. The measurements were approaching dangerous levels. Dr. Peterson explained that if the dilation continued, they might need to deliver the baby early to protect Lisa's life. "How?" "Early?" Tom asked, his voice tight with worry. "Ideally, we want to get to 32 weeks, Dr. Peterson replied. "But if your heart function deteriorates, we may not have that luxury." Lisa was admitted to the hospital for monitoring at 29 weeks. What was supposed to be a short observation stretched into days, then weeks. She lay in a hospital bed, connected to monitors that tracked both her heart rhythm and the baby's movements. The days blended together in a haze of medical rounds, test results, and worried conversations with specialists. Tom practically lived at the hospital, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair beside her bed. Family members took turns visiting, but everyone seemed afraid to say the wrong thing. The baby was active, kicking and moving regularly, which provided some comfort. Lisa would spend hours with her hands on her belly, talking to their unborn child. She told the baby about the room they had finally decorated at home, about the family waiting to meet them, and about how loved they already were. 31 weeks. During a routine morning check, the monitor started beeping frantically. Lisa's blood pressure had spiked, and her heart rhythm was irregular. The medical team rushed in. Adjusting her position and checking the baby's status. Dr. Peterson arrived within minutes, studying the readouts with a grave expression. Lisa could see in his eyes that something had changed. The careful balance they had been maintaining was starting to tip toward crisis. "We need to talk about delivery," he said quietly. "Your heart can't handle much more of this stress." The alarm from Lisa's heart monitor pierced through the quiet hospital room at 2:47 a.m. Tom jolted awake from the uncomfortable chair where he had been dozing, immediately alert as nurses rushed into the room. Lisa was conscious but struggling to breathe, her face pale and frightened. "What's happening?" Tom asked. But the nurses were too focused on checking machines and adjusting equipment to answer him immediately, within minutes. Dr. Peterson appeared, still in his pajamas with a hospital coat thrown over them. He studied the monitor readings with intense concentration, his usual calm demeanor replaced by obvious concern. "Lisa, your aortic measurements have jumped significantly overnight," he explained, speaking quickly but clearly. "We're seeing dangerous enlargement that puts you at immediate risk for rupture." The words hit Tom like a physical blow. Aortic rupture, they had discussed this possibility, but hearing it as an immediate threat made everything feel surreal and terrifying. Dr. Peterson called for an emergency consultation with the cardiac surgery team. Within an hour, Lisa's hospital room was crowded with specialists, cardiologists, neonatologists, anesthesiologists, and surgical staff. Everyone spoke in urgent, hushed tones while Lisa lay in the center of it all, feeling like her body had betrayed her. "We have two priorities here," Dr. Peterson addressed both Lisa and Tom. "We need to deliver your baby safely, and we need to repair Lisa's aorta before it becomes life-threatening. The challenge is doing both procedures safely." The head of cardiac surgery, Dr. Martinez, explained the plan. They would perform an emergency cesarean section first, getting the baby out quickly to reduce stress on Lisa's cardiovascular system. Immediately after delivery, while Lisa was still under anesthesia, they would perform open-heart surgery to repair her enlarged aorta. "Has this been done before?" Tom asked, his voice barely steady. Dr. Martinez was honest. "The combination of emergency delivery and immediate cardiac repair is rare. We've done each procedure many times separately, but never back-to-back like this. However, given Lisa's condition, we don't have the luxury of waiting." Lisa felt strangely calm as the medical team explained the risks. Maybe it was shock, or maybe she was just tired of being afraid. "How dangerous is it?" she asked directly. Dr. Martinez didn't sugarcoat the answer. "Both procedures carry significant risks on their own. Combining them increases those risks, but not operating carries even greater risks at this point." They had less than 6 hours to prepare. The baby, at 31 weeks and 5 days, would be premature but had a good chance of survival with intensive care. The neonatal team explained that while the baby would need weeks in the NICU, 31-week babies typically did well with proper support. Tom called their families, trying to explain the situation without causing complete panic. Lisa's mother wanted to drive to the hospital immediately, but Tom asked her to wait until after the surgery. "There's nothing anyone can do right now except let the doctors work," he said. Though he wasn't sure he believed his own words, the preparation process was overwhelming. Consent forms, medical history reviews, and discussions about worst-case scenarios filled the early morning hours. Lisa had to sign papers acknowledging that she understood the risks, including the possibility that she might not survive the combined procedures. "I need you to know," she told Tom during a quiet moment between medical consultations, "that if something happens to me, I want you to focus on our baby. Promise me you'll be okay." Tom couldn't bring himself to promise that. The idea of losing Lisa was unthinkable, but he nodded anyway because she needed to hear it. At 8 a.m., they wheeled Lisa toward the operating room. Tom walked alongside the gurney as far as he was allowed, holding her hand and trying to memorize her face. At the doors to the surgical suite, he had to let go. "I love you," she said, squeezing his hand one last time. "I love you too. I'll see you when you wake up," he replied. Hoping desperately that would be true, the waiting room became Tom's prison for the next 7 hours. Dr. Peterson had warned him that the surgery would be lengthy. They needed to take their time with both procedures to minimize complications. But knowing that didn't make the waiting any easier. Tom's phone buzzed constantly with messages from family and friends, but he couldn't concentrate enough to respond to most of them. He paced the waiting room, sat down, stood up again, and repeated the cycle endlessly. Other families in the waiting room gave him sympathetic looks. Recognizing the particular agony of someone whose loved one was in surgery, every hour, a nurse came out to give him brief updates. The delivery went well. The baby is being taken to the NICU now. Dr. Martinez is beginning the cardiac procedure. Each update was both a relief and a reminder that they still had a long way to go. 11:30 a.m. A NICU nurse came to find Tom. "Would you like to see your son?" she asked with a gentle smile. Tom felt his knees weaken. Their baby was alive and breathing. He followed the nurse to the NICU, where his son lay in an incubator surrounded by wires and machines. The baby was tiny, just over 3 pounds, but his little chest was rising and falling steadily. "He's doing remarkably well for his gestational age," the neonatologist explained. "His lungs are functioning better than we expected, and his vital signs are stable. The cystic fibrosis will require ongoing treatment, but right now he's holding his own." Tom stared at his son through the clear walls of the incubator, overwhelmed by love and fear in equal measure. This tiny person was depending on both of his parents to survive, but one of them was still fighting for her life in an operating room down the hall. The cardiac surgery continued for hours. Tom alternated between sitting with his son in the NICU and pacing the surgical waiting room. Time moved strangely, sometimes crawling, sometimes seeming to skip forward in chunks. At 2:15 p.m., Tom noticed increased activity around the surgical area. Nurses were moving more quickly, and he could hear urgent conversations that he couldn't quite make out. His heart rate spiked as he imagined all the things that could be going wrong. Dr. Martinez finally emerged from surgery at 3:20 p.m., still in his surgical gear. Tom searched his face desperately for clues about how things had gone. The surgeon looked exhausted but not devastated, which Tom took as a positive sign. "The surgery was successful," Dr. Martinez said, and Tom felt his legs give out slightly. "We were able to repair the aortic enlargement and reinforce the area to prevent future problems. There were some complications during the procedure. Lisa's blood pressure dropped significantly at one point, and we had some bleeding issues, but we were able to manage everything." Tom felt tears he hadn't realized he was holding back start to flow. "Is she okay? Can I see her?" "She's in recovery now and will be moved to the cardiac ICU within the hour. She's stable, but the next 24 hours will be critical. Her body has been through an enormous amount of stress, and we need to monitor her closely for any signs of complications. The recovery process would be long and uncertain. Lisa would need weeks to heal from the major surgery, and they still didn't know if there would be any lasting effects from the cardiac procedure. But she had survived the most dangerous part, and their son was fighting his own battles in the NICU. As Tom finally saw Lisa in the ICU, unconscious but breathing on her own, he realized their journey was far from over. The next phase would bring new challenges and uncertainties, but for the first time in months, he allowed himself to hope that their family might actually make it through this together. Lisa woke up 3 days after surgery feeling like she had been hit by a truck. Every muscle in her body ached, and the incision across her chest felt like it was on fire. But when she saw Tom sitting beside her hospital bed, holding their tiny son for the first time, nothing else mattered. "He's beautiful," she whispered. Her voice still hoarse from the breathing tube. Tom carefully placed their son in her arms. Even though the baby was still connected to monitoring wires, feeling his small body against her chest made everything they had been through feel worth it. He was so much smaller than she had imagined, but his grip on her finger was surprisingly strong. "The doctors say he's doing better than expected," Tom said, unable to hide his amazement. "His breathing is good, and he's already gaining weight." The first few weeks were a blur of recovery appointments and NICU visits. Lisa's healing process was slower than anyone had hoped. The combination of major heart surgery and cesarean delivery had taken a serious toll on her body. Some days she could barely walk from her hospital bed to the bathroom without feeling exhausted, but there were encouraging signs too. Her heart function, which doctors had been worried about for months, seemed to be improving. The surgical repair had not only fixed the dangerous enlargement, but had actually strengthened her cardiovascular system in unexpected ways. Dr. Peterson was cautiously optimistic during her 2-week checkup. "Your heart measurements are better than they've been in years," he said, studying her latest test results. "The surgery appears to have corrected some issues we didn't even know existed." Their son, who they had named Michael, was making remarkable progress in the NICU. Despite being born at 31 weeks with cystic fibrosis, his lung function was better than doctors had predicted. The CF team explained that his specific genetic variant seemed to be milder than average, and new treatments were showing promising results. 20 years ago, this diagnosis would have meant a very different prognosis, the pediatric pulmonologist explained. "But we have medications now that can significantly improve quality of life and life expectancy for children with CF." Lisa threw herself into learning about cystic fibrosis treatment. She attended parent education classes, connected with other CF families, and researched the latest medical advances. What she discovered surprised her. While CF was still a serious condition requiring daily care, many children and adults with the disease were living full, active lives. Michael came home from the hospital when he was 6 weeks old, weighing just over 5 pounds. Lisa had prepared for round-the-clock medical care, but the reality was less overwhelming than she had feared. He needed chest percussion therapy twice a day to help clear his lungs, enzyme supplements with every feeding, and regular doctor visits. But between treatments, he was just like any other baby. The most unexpected development came during Lisa's 3-month cardiac follow-up. Dr. Martinez, the surgeon who had performed her heart repair, stared at her test results with genuine surprise. "This is remarkable," he said, showing her the comparison between her pre-surgery and current heart function. "Not only did we fix the aortic enlargement, but your overall cardiac performance is now better than normal range. The surgical technique we used appears to have strengthened your entire cardiovascular system." Lisa felt like she was hearing about someone else's medical results. "What does that mean for future pregnancies?" Dr. Martinez smiled. "Well, that's not a conversation I expected to have with you. But theoretically, your heart function is now strong enough that pregnancy wouldn't pose the same risks it did before. Of course, there's still the genetic component to consider." The idea of having another baby hadn't even occurred to Lisa. She had assumed Michael would be their only biological child. But knowing that the surgery had actually improved her health, rather than just saving her life, opened up possibilities she hadn't imagined. As Michael grew, his personality began to shine through. He was a happy, curious baby who seemed determined to keep up with everything around him. His CF treatments became routine, just part of their daily schedule, like feeding and diaper changes. Lisa often forgot that other families didn't do chest percussion therapy during their morning routines. When Michael was 8 months old, something unexpected happened. Dr. Peterson asked if Lisa and Tom would be willing to share their story with other couples facing similar decisions. A major medical journal wanted to write about their case because the surgical approach and outcomes had been so unusual. "Your experience could help other families," Dr. Peterson explained, "and it might contribute to better treatment protocols for women with Marfan syndrome who want to have children." Lisa was hesitant at first. Their journey had been so personal and frightening that sharing it publicly felt strange. But she remembered how much it had helped to connect with other women online during her own decision-making process. They agreed to participate in the medical case study, and their story was published in the Journal of Maternal Fetal Medicine. The article described the innovative surgical approach that had saved Lisa's life and how careful monitoring throughout pregnancy had led to successful outcomes despite significant risks. After the article was published, Lisa started receiving messages from women around the world who were facing similar decisions. Some had Marfan syndrome and were considering pregnancy. Others had different high-risk conditions but felt inspired by Lisa's story to explore their options more thoroughly. Lisa found herself becoming an unofficial advocate for high-risk pregnancies. She started a blog sharing their experience and connecting families with similar challenges. The responses were overwhelming. Hundreds of couples dealing with genetic conditions, heart problems, and other medical complications that made pregnancy risky. Dr. Peterson's team began using Lisa's case as a model for developing new treatment protocols. They created a comprehensive care plan specifically for women with Marfan syndrome, incorporating lessons learned from her pregnancy and surgery. The program has since helped dozens of other families navigate similar situations. Michael thrived as he grew older. By his second birthday, his CF symptoms remained manageable with daily treatments. He was meeting all his developmental milestones and showing no signs of the severe lung problems that had once been common in children with cystic fibrosis. The most surprising development came when Michael was 3 years old. Lisa and Tom decided to try for a second child, something they never thought would be possible. With her improved heart function and the medical team's experience from Michael's pregnancy, the risks were significantly lower. Their daughter was born healthy at 38 weeks with no genetic conditions and no complications for Lisa. The pregnancy had been carefully monitored, but it felt almost routine compared to their first experience. Today, Michael is 5 years old and starting kindergarten. He takes his daily medications without complaint and can explain to curious classmates why he needs to do breathing treatments. His CF team is amazed by his lung function and overall health. Lisa's heart remains strong, and she has become a spokesperson for high-risk pregnancy research. She speaks at medical conferences and has helped raise funding for studies into better treatments for both Marfan syndrome and cystic fibrosis. People ask if we regret taking such big risks, Lisa reflects. But look at what we would have missed. Michael is the most joyful, determined little person I know. And the medical advances that came from our experience have helped so many other families. Their story has become a case study in how sometimes the biggest risks can lead to the most unexpected rewards. The pregnancy that doctors said could kill, Lisa ended up strengthening her heart. The child they were told would suffer has exceeded every expectation. And the journey they thought would end in tragedy became the beginning of hope for countless other families facing impossible choices.